Now, I keep talking about, in these videos, I keep talking about edema, E-D-E-M-A. And edema is a human anatomy term meaning excess fluids, okay? So however you're going to use this human anatomy, I mean, even if you're going to use it as a parent, okay? Anytime we have excess fluids, like we have with the lymphatic system breaks off and we have all this extra fluid, that's edema. Extra blood circulating, we have edema. So excess tissue fluid is edema. Okay, so I just wanted to verify that for you. Okay, let's go on with some more here. Once again, I'm covering stuff that's going to be right on your test. An efferent, E-F-F-E-R-E-N-T, efferent lymphatic vessel is carrying fluid. What? Okay, so efferent. This is the key. What does efferent mean? It means away from. Okay, so an efferent lymphatic vessel is carrying fluid away from a node. Okay, so the efferent lymphatic vessels are going away from a node. All right. Now, okay, so let's talk about the areas that contain lymph nodes. Okay, the areas that contain lymph nodes. The only area that doesn't contain lymph nodes is in the brain. Isn't that interesting? Okay. So the areas that contain the abdominal cavity, okay, the thoracic cavity, the auxiliary regions. The body has lymph nodes throughout the whole body, but in the brain, okay, or the cranial region, we don't have lymph nodes. Now, let's think about why that would be. As if we're a robot and not, I mean, it's interesting how we're masterfully created, but you don't have lymph nodes in your brain because lymph nodes, whenever you have the organism and you have, the antigen in the body causing the B cells to produce rapidly, then the lymph node expands and gets bigger. Well, what can we not have in the brain? We can't have the pressure. We can't put pressure on different parts of the brain. So there are no lymph nodes in the cranial part of the body. Other than that, we find lymph nodes everywhere. Okay. Now, let's talk about tumors here. Tumors are most likely inactivated by, okay, now this is okay, I wanted to cover this question pretty quick, okay? I wanted to cover this question quick because we talked about B cells and we talked about T cells, okay? All right. Tumors are most likely inactivated by, now, it says by blank cells. Now, B cells will be one of the answers, but that's not the answer, okay? How do we get rid of a tumor? We talked about this a while ago. Tumors are more likely inactivated by T cells. But let's talk about what kind of T cells, okay? Let's talk about what kind of T cells. They're cytotoxic, C-Y-T-O-T-O-X-I-C. Cytotoxic T cells are the ones that go in and simply address tumors. Wow, cytotoxic. I mean, they address other toxins in the body, but they recognize the tumors. So on your test, tumors are most likely inactivated by cytotoxic T cells. Okay? All right, so you might be tempted to put B cells, but we don't inactivate it by, the B cells kill them, but what do the T cells do? They produce more B cells. So cytotoxic is a type of T cell that goes in and inactivates a tumor. Now, the increase in antibody levels in a second antigen exposure is due to the, all right, now listen to the question again, okay? The increase in antibody levels in a second antigen exposure, okay, second antigen exposure means that we've seen this antigen twice in the body, okay, we're starting to see it over and over, and this is called, okay, it's due to the memory B cell, okay, memory B cell. Let me read it again. I know this gets crazy, all right. The increase in antibody levels in a second antigen exposure is due to the memory B cell. The memory B cells, once we see an antigen once, then we've made this kind of Velcro thing for it. And then when we see it twice, we have a memory B cell. So when the T cells come in, what do? Especially the cytotoxin T cells, They produce a lot of the B cells called memory B cells because it makes the same for the same antigen over and over and over. Okay, pretty cool. All right, now let's talk about the function of the lymph nodes. Okay, so the function of the lymph nodes is they house lymphocytes and macrophages. Okay, macrophages is what lymphocytes makes the organism that goes through there. That's the lymphatic fluid. Now, once again, when we see the word phage, it means to eat. It's kind of like so macrophages eat up those organisms. So the functions of the lymph nodes house the lymphocytes and the macrophages. They also filter the lymph. Okay, the lymph nodes, as the fluid goes through, it filters through and gets the bad stuff out of the lymph. Okay, if it's something that needs to be fought, then if it's something that needs to be fought, like if you have a cold, I mean just a regular cold, okay, just got a regular organism going through your body, we can tell, a lot of times, if you're a nurse or a doctor or just yourself, if you can feel the lymph nodes swollen, what are they doing? They're filtering out and they're catching an organism in there, and those B cells are producing more B cells, so all of a sudden they're getting hard. Oh, well, I might be really sick if my lymph nodes are just feel like a marble under there. Then there's a lot going on. We're filtering out a lot of the antigen, a lot of the foreign material in there, and we're making these B cells really fast. And we're trying to do what? We're producing cytokines that are isolating from those T cells that are isolating that organism in the lymph node, so we can fight them right there. And all of a sudden, wow, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Why? Because because that lymph node is filtering out the organism that we need, and it's making more B cells. Okay, so what else does it's pretty important stuff. Okay, it's pretty important stuff. So it filters the lymph, and then the other thing it does is it produces lymphocytes. Okay, so the lymph node not only houses the lymphocytes and the macrophages, it also produces more lymphocytes. So I get this lymphatic fluid, I lose a lot of lymphatic fluid. What do? The lymph node makes more lymphocytes, which is the material that makes up the lymphatic fluid. So pretty interesting, okay? Pretty interesting. Now, now let's talk about this. It says, I want to talk about this because now we're going to talk about our defense system again, okay? So, this is a non-specific defense against the disease, okay? So, by non-specific, it means we don't have to even know what the disease is that we can actually fight it. So, what are some of the ways we do that? Okay, species resistance. So, what happens is, whenever we develop a resistance to an organism, then we begin to get rid of that organism. Now, we talk about resistance a lot of times for a resistance against an antibody. We have resistance against certain organisms. So we develop a resistance for, say, tuberculosis in our body. Okay, so species resistance. All right, that's once again we're talking about non-specific defenses against disease. Phagocytosis. That's where our body comes in, and through the white blood cells and the lymphocytes. Remember, I was telling you, phagocyte, we go in and eat up the organism, and literally eat it up, literally dissolve it, go through, filter it, and get rid of it. Okay, so we've got phagocytosis, and then we have something called interferon. Now, interferon is amazing because interferon is. Let's come back and talk about interferon for a little bit. Interferon is in our system, and it literally goes through, and it acts as an antibiotic to actually kill the organism. As a matter of fact, early cancer treatment before the B cells and the T cells involved just tons of interferon, and interferon could go in and kill cells. So it might kill all kinds of things, even viruses we have to look at, because we know antibiotics don't kill viruses, but interferon looks for foreign particles to kill, okay? And it kills them a little different. Remember, phagocytosis eats them. Well, interferon actually destroys the cell membrane and actually causes. I don't want to chase this rabbit too far, but it keeps the cell from. It makes this disease cell not work. and it causes the cell to not be able to reproduce, and it literally messes up the messenger RNA in the cell, so the cell can't reproduce, and that's interferon. So our big cancer treatment before B cells and T cells was interferon, so that the cells couldn't reproduce. Now, what happened was that worked pretty good, but it didn't work fast enough. So if we caught this, it's like everything else. If you catch that cancer really early, then certain treatments are good. The B cells and the T cells can address more cancer cells or disease cells. I don't want to make it just cancer. There's so many other things. But the B cells and the T cells can address things so much quicker than interferon. Okay, another question? Okay. All right. The subclavian trunk vessel drains the arm. Okay. S-U-B-C-L-A-V-I-A-N, trunk. So what are they talking about here? So here's the reason why we have this is because we have these lymph nodes, and you notice a picture on the lymph nodes. We have a ton in the torso, the abdomen, but we don't have a lot of lymph nodes in the arm as such. Instead, they're up in the shoulder. Okay. So when we talk about the subclavian, okay, what's the bone? What's the bone that's associated with? It's the clavicle. Okay, sub means below, clavian means the clavicle, and the trunk means that we have a vein that runs. And we had a picture of that earlier. I was showing you that, especially with I was showing you that with the chest and the breast area. But we have a subclavian, a vein that runs right here that also filters out the lymphatic system for our whole arms. Okay. So once again, the lymphatic, the subclavian trunk vessel drains the arm. Now, the lymphatic ducts will empty directly into the what? Okay, so the lymphatic ducts. Okay, so once again, so here's this lymphatic fluid going through here. Okay, so here's this lymphatic fluid going through. So what does it go through as it moves into this? And the answer is, it's kind of interesting, okay? The subclavian veins actually take in the lymphatic fluid, okay? So the subclavian veins, the subclavian trunk, once again, the question I had earlier was, the blank vessel drains the arm? That's the subclavian trunk. What's this question? The lymphatic ducts will empty directly into the subclavian veins, all right? Now, what is one major force that causes intercellular fluid to enter lymphatic capillaries? Okay. Now listen to the question. All right. Once again, and I know this is kind of tricky. What is one major force that causes intercellular fluid to enter lymphatic capillaries? All right. And what it is, tissue hydrostatic pressure. Okay. So what are we talking about? Tissue hydrostatic pressure. So we have all our cells. I'm trying to think of an example here. Okay, so let's say that we've got our throat here, and we've got these lymph nodes, and so they're going through. But the picture of the lymph nodes, it was incredible because the lymph nodes weren't connected to the veins. What causes this fluid to be able to move? Okay, what causes fluid to be able to move? And once again, it's tissue hydrostatic pressure, meaning that the walls themselves are compressed on there. Hydrostatic means that we have a pressure, and so as we put more pressure as we have more of the lymphatic fluid made, we increase the size of the cell. What does that do? That increases the hydrostatic pressure of the tissue, causing the fluid to literally go out of that cell into the lymphatic system. So once again, pretty crazy. I'll pick that up at the next video, and maybe we'll just be one more away. Big chapter.